And we are recording with Dr. Seik on Monday, August 14th, 2023 at 2:35 p.m. Eastern time. As I was just telling him, I apologize. I just walked in the door and trying to be as professional as I can. And I'm a little nervous. I feel like I ran out of like my room going to like a meeting or something. And I'm like double checking. I'm like, I have pants on. I'm like, there's nothing, everything's good. There's nothing like everything's good. Everything's showing in the background. This is probably the quickest I've ever gone from walking in the door to starting a podcast, except for that fan is in the shot. So I'm going to move that. Dr. C, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning. Hey, it's afternoon for you, Tommy. Still morning for me out here, West Coast. I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada, but my name is Robert Seik. I am a PharmD. I'm a doctor of pharmacy. I'm a pharmacy owner in Las Vegas, Nevada. I own a compounding pharmacy that's licensed in almost all 50 states. I've got 2 to go. And I'm associated with the wellness company. I'm their chief of integrated therapeutics, and that FMNM, after my doctor of pharmacy credential, is fellow in metabolic and nutritional medicine. My career went from working in traditional drugstores, hospitals, to over 10 years of clinical research in the biotech industry. And I bought a compounding pharmacy with some partners in 2005. I'm the only partner now, and became passionate about functional medicine or integrative medicine, where we combine, a few choice prescription items. I think the future of medicine will see a lot of repurposed drugs, and let's talk about what we saw
Ivermectin
repurposed
just
during
now,
COVID.
right?
Right. Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And the way forward, driven by not only public demand, but forward thinking medical practitioners, is going to be to integrate for health and wellness, lifestyle change, targeted, focused nutritional supplementation therapy, and more, to make people well, so that we're not so dependent on that pharmaceutical industrial complex, which is
Yeah.
in business to make you sick, no doubt. And this is where I'm at. I'm glad I'm in this space. For all the turmoil that there has been, some ups and downs, it's a good spot to be.
Could you explain to me what compounding, and you have to excuse me posting the live link right now. Could you explain to me what compounding pharmacy is? I I have very limited knowledge. I graduated college in 2013. I got into medical school in Miami, decided that wasn't for me. Applied to pharmacy school in Florida, got in, decided that wasn't for me. So I have like a somewhere there's still like a little candle in my heart for pharmacy. That being said, what is compounding pharmacy?
So thanks for asking that, because I'll give you an explanation. So a lot of people don't know. I own an independent pharmacy, so I'm not one of the big chain drugstores. But like any pharmacy, we receive prescriptions and we dispense prescriptions pursuant to a practitioner's order. I don't accept insurance. That's a whole other topic. I don't, because I would actually lose money on
Yeah.
8 out of 10 claims. I hated working retail pharmacy 2 weeks after graduating school, thinking, what did I do this for? So many people are just picking up their medication after medication, and the older they were, the more they're picking up. I'm like, this just isn't right for health and wellness. And then I went to
Yeah.
the total dark side in the industry. But in compounding, we need prescriptions for what we do, but it's drugs that typically are not commercially available for one reason or another. So we actually have to make them in a lab. And there's two
Oh,
types of compounding: non-sterile, so that's capsules and creams, and sterile compounding. And the biggest jump in the compounding business was made around 2008, 2009. Suzanne Summers published a book on her experience getting natural or bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, different from the pharmaceuticalized chemical hormone replacement therapy, a drug we call Premarin, which actually, there's another one called Prempro, which includes a progestin, a petroleum derived hormone analog that was only approved in the United States and Canada. And Suzanne Summers, well, Chrissy might not necessarily be the best clinical resource of knowledge and information, but she drove public awareness as women, baby boomer women especially, went through menopause and said, well, one, this is horrible. And I don't want all of these toxic drugs. And Wyeth was pushed, the manufacturer of Premarin and Prempro, was encouraged to conduct a study and look at the safety of Premarin and Prempro. And they were looking at billions of dollars in sales. What they didn't realize what the outcome would be, which is the fact that those drugs, especially the women on the progestin, different from progesterone, the medroxyprogesterone acetate chemical that makes up the pro part of Prempro, increase the risk of breast cancer, ovarian cancer, heart attack, and stroke. And millions of women refused to take the pharmaceutical hormones and turned to Suzanne Summers, one of her 4 books, and said, I've done really well as a breast cancer survivor, even on bioidentical hormones made by a compounding pharmacy that remade our industry. And it's still a big part of my business today. And from there, there's been a lot of interest in alternative therapeutics. We talked about ivermectin. Hydroxychloroquine doesn't need to be compounded, but I can make hydroxychloroquine suspension for kids. And I got calls for that during COVID. We do some veterinary formulas. A lot of human medications are still used for veterinary application. Those have to be compounded. And being out here in Nevada, where we have an area called Area 51, there happen to be a lot of retired guys who previously worked for the Department of Energy. And Department of Energy does what? There are civilian contractors, often on nuclear reactors. So whether it's a power plant or a submarine, these civilian contractors, unfortunately,
you're speaking my love language right now. Area
yeah,
51, Department of Energy, DARPA, Skunk Works.
well,
I'm
there's a
listening.
lot of that. So
I'm listening.
these
Go on.
guys, unfortunately, well, one engagement I have, which is important because a compounding pharmacy can provide things for Department of Energy workers or retirees that are victims of exposure illness.
Oh yeah.
So you can accumulate alpha particles if you're around an alpha emitter too long. The poor guys don't listen, and for 20 years they're grabbing the beryllium bars with their bare hands, so they end up with borreliosis. They inhale the silica from the fiberglass insulation, the lung silicosis. It's kind of a brotherhood. And I laugh. I'm like, of course, who wouldn't want to retire out in, Pahrump, Nevada? So all the coal miners from the Northeast come out here, and they've got coal miners' pneumoconiosis. And there's special things that we can do. I have a credential with the Department of Energy just for that. We can help detox the lungs. We can reduce that alpha particle toxicity. If they're exposed to radiation, they might have nerve damage. And they are on, sadly, a number of regular traditional prescription drugs, but the specialty things that really advance the treatment of their issues come from a compounding pharmacy. So that's the long explanation, and I think I dove deep into what that is. So did I answer your question? What a compounding pharmacy is?
Absolutely. I guess really kind of 2 directions to go into would be all that stuff with Area 51, but you said a couple minutes ago, talking about COVID and people coming in or older and older people coming in and what am I doing? This isn't right. You're just creating like a user base, and then you said one line. You said so you went to the dark side of the industry. What is that? What is that? I want to go back and open that up. What is dark side of the industry?
So when I'm working as a retail pharmacist, chain drugstore, and I told you after 2 weeks after graduating school, my parents were upset. I grew up south of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in a steel mill town. Okay,
yeah.
I went to school in Pittsburgh at Duquesne University, and I'm working at a chain drugstore. And I go visit my mom and dad. They're like, well, how do you like it? You're out of school and you're getting your first pharmacist paychecks. I'm like, Mom, Dad, I hate it.
This is
why?
terrible. Yeah.
I said, somebody comes in, they're in their 20s. All the girls are on birth control pills. The guys will start NSAID, they're, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. They'll start those in their 30s. And then, with each decade of life, people are on more and more medications that once you're Medicare age or a little older, you don't have anything to do all day, but pay attention to the timer. And when you have to take your medication, something there's something just wrong about this, right? And so I moved to Las Vegas just because in 1997, 2 years after I graduated, the pharmacist jobs were plentiful and they paid 50% more than Pennsylvania. So I said, okay, if I'm going to go somewhere, I'm going to make money and decide what is the next thing that I'm going to do. So, well, let me try to get into the drug industry. At least it's a good lifestyle, especially if you're in sales. If you're in sales at the time, well, before time, date, GPS stamping, right? Yeah. If you're a drug sales rep, we called it the 5T work week, Tuesday through Thursday, 10 to 2. That was the 5T work week. It was okay. That really wasn't fulfilling, handing out the little stuffed Claritin baseball. I worked for Sharing Plow for a while, and then the Prescription Drug Marketing Act eliminated that. I said, well, this isn't fulfilling. I'm making some money. It's an easy lifestyle. But with a PharmD, I went over to a biotech company. So typically that's a sales job you would get when people are 10 years older than I was at the time. And they had more senior, like, you got a PharmD. We're going to use you for these complicated therapeutics. And these were drugs for rare pediatric immune disorders, virology, infectious disease. And I did work sales in that company for a while. And then they said, wait a minute, you're a PharmD and our medical liaison just left. You're going to be the new medical liaison. And what's that? That's clinical trials management. So when a drug comes out of in vitro research, and early research in animals and goes into human research. You got phase 2 clinical trial, small group of humans, and you got phase 3. That's the trial for, we're going to submit for FDA approval because phase 2 proved that, okay, we've got a good shot. So let's not spend the big money on phase 3 until we need to. Now it's phase 3. Get out there, call on 35 clinical trial sites, which I did. So from Las Vegas, a direct flight to any city I needed to go to, Portland, Seattle, gosh, San Diego, LA. I had the best territory in the country.
Sure.
And even Honolulu, Hawaii. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought clinical research would be a more pure pursuit of the industry. I just didn't like this pill pushing. And I learned a lot because I did my MBA in 2003. And what did I learn? I learned these stark facts that, for one, the pharmaceutical industry in 2003 controlled over 60% of primetime television advertising, direct to consumer advertising for drugs. And what did the industry? Pharma stands for Pharmaceutical Researchers and Manufacturers Association. So that's PHRMA. And pharma knew at the time that, well, if we spend this money, 65% of the time a patient visits a primary care doctor, they're going to ask for a drug by name because we put it on the screen, right?
Ask your
And
doctor about.
right. And 80% of the time they ask for it, they get it. And then what happened to medicine? So all the medical doctors that understand, gosh, I've seen a 20-year transition in medicine where the average primary care visit went from not necessarily 30 minutes, but let's say 20-minute visit. The average primary care visit today is 7.6 minutes and usually results in 1 or 2 prescriptions. And there's some medical providers that work for the corporations that provide medicine. And I call them expensive box checkers. I'm kind of cynical. And sometimes I say that to say, you know, maybe you as a practitioner can consider learning about things to make your patients healthier instead of just cashing that paycheck, your W-2 that you get from your corporation. Because how many of you actually look at the patient these days? How many put your hands on the patient as opposed to looking at the screen, typing, okay, yeah, and you're clicking boxes on the electronic health record form. It spits out, well, these are the potential diagnoses. Click, click, you click on those. And then it's, okay, you work for a corporation, so it's only the corporate approved treatment plan. Okay, what pharmacy do you want? Okay, great. I've solved your problem. I've given you prescriptions. Now get out of here. That's cookbook, expensive box checker medicine. You go to the retail drugstore, you pick it up, and it's a fabulous model to drive utilization and utilization of drugs. And practitioners will tell you, gosh, 30 years ago, what I get reimbursed for a primary care visit was great, but now it's almost nothing. And that's the state of medicine today. So there is a break that is occurring. Like I said, I do own my compounding pharmacy, but I'm associated with the wellness company. And that's the company that brought us together. And they have a passion for changing the way medicine is going to go. And I see it going one of 2 ways. We're going to go from those expensive box checkers to either foreign physicians in India or the Philippines as your telehealth primary care doc, or even an AI program. So let's bring in a movie scene from the movie Elysium, right? Remember the robot that treated Matt Damon? Okay, it's a problem, and the solution is a prescription. And look at what the FDA does when they get in the way of trade. The FDA had threatened to remove N-acetylcysteine from the market during COVID. So Amazon said, yes, we'll take it off of our website. I had access to it the whole time. There was concern about it being rid of N-acetylcysteine. There's a whole book written about it, and it's in that short list of supplement category that if I was going to take one thing that reduces inflammation, helps build up glutathione, which detoxifies, N-acetylcysteine actually has direct activity on inhibiting the replication of COVID. It is in combination products to help treat acute COVID or even spike protein, which is driving inflammation. And it's a vitamin, but we feared that it was going to get targeted. And without public awareness that is drawn to it by the alternative-minded practitioners, companies like the wellness company, maybe we would have lost it. So I think there's going to be a schism. There's going to be a split in medicine. And I'm happy to, again, contribute my knowledge over the last 20 years of integrating what used to be called alternative, right? Get out in the sun without sunglasses and walk the earth barefoot, eat clean food, and don't drink soda, stuff like that. Well, that's the alternative. You don't need drugs. You can do a lot with good nutrition and nutritional supplements because our agricultural soil is so depleted. So let's do that. And it's like, wait a minute. That's not medicine, Robert. That's quackery. That's voodoo. That's the alternative. And I say, no, it's not. Because when you take a man-made molecule made by the pharmaceutical industry that has never been in the human body before, and you say, this is what treatment is. No, no, no. That is the alternative. That is the alternative to what is natural. But I'm not completely opposed to the pharmaceutical industry, because the way I see it, really, we could do a lot in the world of health and wellness with 100 prescription drugs, and the vast majority of them now are generic. They're off patent, they're cheap, and they will be repurposed. Because watch this. If you just go to, last comment, pubmed.com and type in ivermectin and cancer, we're going to find a lot of information that has been available for years, for decades. It wasn't a new phenomenon for hydroxychloroquine, for example, and its activity against any virus that depended on an enzyme that we call RNA-dependent RNA polymerase for replication. That's what it does. It helps the virus replicate. And hydroxychloroquine has activity against it. Hydroxychloroquine is anti-inflammatory. It's been used to treat autoimmune diseases. So that's a repurposed drug that is relatively cheap. You compare it to, say, remdesivir. So I like to give the economic examples. Remdesivir is a hospital treatment, IV treatment, that they used for COVID. It was never approved by phase 3 trials. Why? Because it was so darn toxic. It caused multi-organ dysfunction in 65% of patients. Not necessarily failure, but multi-organ dysfunction. I mean, that's a bad enough term, 65%. So it never made it to phase 3 trials. But hey, we can take this pig and we can put it under the emergency use under authorization umbrella, and we can make money as a drug company, because they'll sell it for $238 a dose and motivate the hospitals to make it part of protocol, because the hospitals will get reimbursed $2,800 per dose from Medicare and $3,200 per dose from private insurance. So I'm happy to be in the space where collectively, my pharmacy, with my knowledge of the wellness company, we say, no, we have a different approach to healthcare. We're running telehealth right now. We're advocates of lifestyle change and nutritional supplements, and come with us as we explore for the next 10, 20 years, getting off of the complete totalitarian pharmaceutical model only, not completely off drugs, but let's stop letting them drive what the perception of healthcare is.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like the criticism of you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Everyone's on their iPhones, and it's like, yeah, but you can't throw the whole thing out. It's also good to have the totality of human knowledge accessible at the speed of light in your pocket with a GPS. Like that's dope. You shouldn't throw that out. But this is also sort of, I guess, like, I guess in the space I'm in for doing podcasts for 3 years is getting censored on YouTube and then realizing there was no pushback. It was just, it's a giant, it's $1 trillion behemoth, and there's nothing to do. It's just the end result of 15, 20 years of internet consolidation. It starts as the Wild West, and then slowly over 20 years consolidated into kind of giant planets: Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. And then there's nothing to do with that. And no one really cares until you don't care about whether or not your brakes work until you need to hit the brakes, right? If you're on the highway, brakes don't work. You don't think about it until you hit a red light and you realize you can't slow down. No one really cared about the monopoly of it. Was the government involved? Probably. It's probably something thrown in the Patriot Act. The NSA is doing something. What do you care? It's 2019. Who cares? All right, well, then there's a virus. And you start talking about it with doctors like I did, and just start getting warnings. You're like, what the hell is this? Talk about an election. Talk about anything. You start getting little tags and little throttles. And you're like, hey, I need the brakes, but the brakes don't work. And there's nothing to do, and there's nowhere to go. Well, inevitably, a bunch of other things rise up: BitChute, Odyssey, CloudHub, Brady on Rumble, Spotify. Well, Spotify is already there. And then really Rumble, I think, is breaking away from the pack. And now there is an actual model. No one's throwing out the idea of social media or of videos, which is the very meta idea of there being videos and you can comment and subscribe and get into arguments with people you'll never meet. They're not throwing that out. It's just moving away from YouTube, and more people are going over there as censorship hits more and more people. No one cares about censorship until it comes knocking on your. I'm not talking about COVID. I'm not talking about Ukraine. What do I care? Well, you're streaming Ghost Recon on your video game stream, and all of a sudden if you say asshole, you get demonetized. Well, now you care. And so the more people it touches, the more people see the value in a new thing and they move over. And then as more people come to Rumble, it gets more, it's fortifying itself and getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So the reason I'm saying all that is I feel like this was probably the inevitable end result of just a free market and corporations, right? The big fish eats all the smaller fish and get bigger and bigger. And yeah, if it's just checking boxes and it's quicker and you can get more patients, and this was probably the end result. But when we reached for the brakes, they didn't work, and it happened during the pandemic. And no one really bats an eye if it's Adderall versus Ritalin versus Concerta versus whatever. But all of a sudden, you're like, hey, I need to get ivermectin, and you can't get it. And then you have pharmacists like, yeah, I'll write it for you anyway. And then they're getting notices like you lose your job. And it's like, oh, there's a real problem here. And it sucks. And you play shoulda, coulda, woulda. We never should have let it get to this point. Then you make peace with the fact that we are at this point, and you go, what steps are we taking from here? Am I anywhere near the target? But that's kind of what's happening with
You
medicine.
are, and I have two things to comment on. One will be short, and one will be a little bit longer. And I'll tell you part about, this is the first time you and I are meeting, and you'll learn a little bit about my journey in all things that are relevant to where we are today in this common unified space for freedom and wellness. The short one is I was absolutely outraged by the fact that chain drugstores trained their pharmacists to refuse, turn away, and even mock and belittle people who presented prescriptions for hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin for COVID. So that's outrageous. And one, that tells me this is a pharmacist who is unaware of the clinical data. If you don't know something, don't comment. It's, well, I didn't know hydroxychloroquine could be used for viruses. Is there any literature on that? And you go, there's been 15 years of research on hydroxychloroquine against different viruses and parasites. 4 men shared the Nobel Prize in Science and Medicine in 2015 for their work on ivermectin in humans. And it wasn't just for river blindness. Ivermectin disturbs tubules that are important for parasites to reconstruct themselves, but also solid tumor cancers. So we're going to find this. But what I was most outraged by is, look, I know what the pharmacist's role is. If I wanted to go to medical school, which I thought about, I would have done that. I would be the diagnostician. I would decide what treatment is. And if I needed to, I would consult with the pharmacist. Hey, what do you think about this? What would you dose this product at what number of milligrams for how many days for this issue? I've trained myself to be aware of the data and be a good treatment consultant, or have an unaware physician say, Robert, I think this is a good idea to try hydroxychloroquine in this patient, but what would your concerns be? And I answered this question during COVID. Well, doc, what's the downside? Like what? I said, hydroxychloroquine has been on the market for decades. It has been used in young and old patients. It has been used worldwide. Some people use it lifelong for autoimmune disorders like lupus or rheumatoid arthritis. When have you heard about serious adverse events? It's not that there's zero. If you have a particular type of heart rhythm abnormality, we call torsades de Pont, the triangles, what we call the QRS complex. And when you turn it over, that's called turning of the points, torsades de Pont. Okay, that's a person you might want to reconsider hydroxychloroquine. However, if the benefits outweigh the risk, this person's going to die if they don't get appropriate treatment for the virus. Then okay, their rhythm is under control. So let's try the hydroxychloroquine. I would say, what's the downside? But to refuse treatment as a pharmacist is a medical intervention. I live in a state, Nevada, where the governor banned the dispensing along with the hydroxychloroquine, along with the Board of Pharmacy. They banned dispensing hydroxychloroquine. I never refused to fill a prescription. They were sued, and successfully that lawsuit went through. They were sued for the practice of medicine, because denying a treatment is the same as deciding what the treatment is.
Well, yeah, it's like no answer is an answer. No comment. That is a comment.
No, your doctor made the decision. I say no, because my corporation I'm working for, one of the big chain drugstores, they said no. And people ask me, like, well, why is that? Why did they do that? Why did the Walgreens and CVS do that? Well, I'll tell you why. And the second thing I wanted to get into was a little bit longer. I've been studying the things that brought us to this confluence of events in the world, really since 2018, seriously. But in 2014, I have a good friend and mentor, still really good friends. He is a physician. I don't want to say his age, because then it'll start to target, well, who is this guy? He's also an admiral in the U.S. Navy. Doesn't work as a physician. He's out there doing the stuff. He's doing the stuff that you and I want him and his team to be doing, and Godspeed to them. And when he enlightened me on the fact that here's the entities that are really in control of the world, and here are their plans. It used to sound crazy to me. And I said, I know that you're not crazy. I know you're not lying. And none of this is mainstream. And I get it, because it's complete control. So you could either commission me right now, which you didn't do. I said, but you could, or you could train me like you do your other flag officers. He says, okay, that's what I'll do. And he sent me a list of 14 books to read that year and another 12 books to read afterwards on a wide variety of subjects. And one of the subjects I go down on is, there's a company. It was a group of German industrialists. They formed a group. They called it IG Farben, Second World War.
IG Farben, yeah.
Okay, so IG Farben. IG is a 2-letter abbreviation for a German word, Intermessinger Gemeinschaft. And what that means is of common interests, our community of interests. And if you think about the model then with Edmund Bernays, who was sought out by Joseph Goebbels, okay, the head of Nazi propaganda. Bernays was Sigmund Freud's nephew. Both of those guys are a little twisted. Yeah. Okay, Bernays published a book in 1920, Propaganda, and those Nazis, Goebbels said, "Hey, we need that. We need to convince the German people that it's good to go to war. We need to do that." Now we're in the 21st century. How advanced is all of that methodology to say, if it's nothing more than to make money, a group of industrialists get together and they say, you go out there and you take control of the media and medical school education. And we're going to define what that is. We are, us industrialists. Now, you go out there and you make people sick, tell them they need fluoride in their water. Now, you, drug industry, you go over there and you make drugs that are going to treat all the side effects and the sicknesses that are going to be caused by everything that we decide to do, including, hey, let's rip things out of commercial agricultural soil let's get boron, let's get copper out of the soil. And then people are going to be depleted and they're going to have these disorders. And you know what? You over there, you control the agricultural chemical companies. Now pharmaceutical and agricultural chemical manufacturers are nearly one and the same.
Yeah.
Bayer and Monsanto are one company now. And you know what? These people are going to get sick and we're going to provide the treatments, but we have to create what the public perception is of that treatment. It's only what we say it is, and they dominate direct-to-consumer advertising. And I've had physicians sit across from me at a table, Robert, it just sounds crazy. And I don't think there are people that are that nefarious and evil. And I said, but that's the problem, right? Because you and I don't think this way.
I always bring up this point, sorry to interrupt. Whenever I bring up any of this stuff, I always say, you're talking as a loving, rational human that just wants to get married, have some kids, buy a dog, and watch the sun set on Fridays. You're not talking as a demon from hell.
Exactly. And it's hard to conceptualize for people that that's what's going on. And here's where we are. And it takes a while. And that has sometimes been a big red pill. And I've talked to, older gentlemen, physicians that were in their 60s and 70s. And 2 days later, their mouth is agape. And this is after a conversation when I said, look, the whole COVID-19 thing is a bioweapons platform. The virus, the EMF, what's in the vaccines, the vaccine, the cell, the mRNA, you can if you wanted to run a live human experiment and say, well, these lot numbers are going to have this methodology of causing sickness. These ones are going to have this. These are going to be our placebo control. You could study all that. If you wanted to have information in the future to say, well, we just want some people to just have less fertility as they get older, right? So you can experiment and capture data on all of this by the lot number of the vaccine. And I had a gentleman look at me and just say, that's a terrible bioweapon. There's no way it's a bioweapon. I said, except for the obviousness of its behavior. And your assumption is probably that bioweapons would be the types of things you choose to kill rapidly.
Yeah.
But there's different levels of biologic warfare. Low-level biologic warfare, okay, is not the movie Outbreak with Dustin Hoffman quickly isolating a group of people that are either treated and cured or they die, but they don't spread to anyone else because that life cycle of the virus is short and the pathology was so severe. But what if your goal is not a few weeks or a few months to have an impact on a population? What if your goal is 5 years? What if your goal is 10? What if the goal is 20 years? And I'll give you one last point on that. I had a discussion with some classmates of mine on Telegram, And as I show the articles that are highlighted by, Dr. Pete McCullough, other physicians about the increase in miscarriages, the decreased birth rate in the United States. So we typically, before COVID, would expect the average human female in the United States of childbearing range, so 15 to 44, to the average would be 2.3 children per woman. So slightly above replacement value for a couple. But after COVID, that dropped down to 2.1. Now, to you and me, that's only 0.2 of a difference, but that's a huge precipitous decline overall. And what does that actually mean? Well, let's say that we have 60 million women approximately in the United States of childbearing age. And we reduce that number. That's 12 million fewer children born during that woman's lifetime, but it's also fewer female children being born that will they themselves have a lower birth rate. So what's the impact over 10 years or 20 years?
And then we're one nation, and our population is 1/20th of the world's population. So then multiply that by 20. So then you're going 4 billion women.
That's right. So you do that, and then you think, well, what is the objective? And I don't know what all the objectives are of moving replacement population. We see that happen with North African immigration into Europe. We see it happen in the United States, because I think you and I know, and that flag that you have behind you, I have on the back window of my truck, right? And say, you know what? We know that America was the place where the founding fathers, put their stake in the ground and said, no more of this monarchy. We're going to govern ourselves. And of course, there were the trip hazards. Even, I mean, would you believe that there weren't enough delegates to ratify the Constitution properly in 1789? So we went on Constitution 2.0, and you've probably talked about the Organic Act of 1871 on the show, and we went on Constitution 3.0. I think we are going to overcome that. I have belief, I have faith that will happen. But you can see, if you are this, whatever this group is, and this is sometimes too for people that I've talked to, they have a hard time believing there is a they. And you can define the they, the enemy. It's not nation state warfare. There might be a nation state contractor, right? Or at least the Communist Party of one nation as the contractor to deploy this stuff. It's like, well, you do all this stuff, or we're gonna destroy your country. So you're kind of obligated. Or maybe you want, that sounds good to us. We'll rule the world for you. We already rule our entire country.
Yeah, what do we care? We'll play ball.
Yeah, we already have communism here, so you only have the few of us to take care of, because we rule the rest of our nation with communism, which you guys taught us. Communism is great if you want to rule like a hive.
Yeah.
Right? Like a queen in a hive. And then you've got the Americans that say, nope. We're not going to abide by that. We're going to rebel. And maybe their plans haven't worked out as well as they wanted to. They wanted them to. And then here we are bringing public awareness on the alternative platforms. Probably you'd agree that, well, if you had access to the major mainstream platforms, the spread of information, awareness, and awakening would have just been faster. But they control those platforms. I mean, is it true that Twitter or Facebook or both were actually DARPA creations? Because you heard a bunch of people there, you plan a bunch of bots, and when you get a bot that says, yeah, this is crap, don't listen to those people pushing ivermectin, you got a bunch of people that are subject to the screen flicker, the EMF, and the constant, ingraining of that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, ivermectin is crap.
I always bring that up. Yeah, it's propaganda 2.0. You're on a phone. 100,000 people fills up a stadium. If you're in a stadium, you feel that 100,000 people. If you're on a phone and somebody says ivermectin's bullshit and it just says 100,000 people like this comment, all that is 100K written with pixels on your phone. But you go, that's a stadium of people. It might be 3 people.
It might, or it might be all 100,000, because I'll tell you, when I did carry the bag, that's the euphemism for being a drug sales rep. We had sales training. And I really didn't, like this. So when I'm 27 years old, I thought the job was cool, right? And first of all, we were taught, okay, you break your doctor personality into one of 4 categories. You got your analytical type, you got your good old boy, you got to talk to him like a buddy. You've got the one that's in a hurry, you got another one, 4 different types, right? And you change your personality to most emulate them, or at least understand how to respond to one of these 4 categories. That was one thing. The other thing is the very simple thing. I was taught by my manager at the time. And I'm like, you know what? You guys typically don't hire pharmacists. Why did you hire me? He says, because the drug you're selling is a dog and nobody else wants the job. So if you want it, I'm tired of interviewing for it. You can have it. It wasn't Claritin at the time. I got
Mm.
some other drug that really didn't sell. I said, am I really going to be able to do this job? He says, you know what? All I have to have you do is show up. I could have a UPS driver drop off pizza boxes and move market share. He said, so if you show up and say anything, it'll work. You'll be beating half the sales reps out there because we know that all you have to do is visit a medical practitioner 7 times. It takes up to 7. Maybe you'll make an impact after the first visit, but if you don't, make a total of 7 visits. And what our data shows in the drug industry is we will influence 80% of prescribers you come in contact with. So that was his message to me. Robert, all you got to do is show up and you'll move market share. Put your face up. So imagine how much money is spent, how much sophistication spent by the pharmaceutical industry, which has changed in rank in Congress, by the way, number of lobbying dollars spent. Some years it's number 1, some years it's number 2, some years it's number 3, but the pharmaceutical industry lobby is so powerful in Congress, which begins with CON for a reason, in my opinion, that it would be ranked first, second, or third, any given year as far as what it contributed in terms of lobbying dollars. So we've got the social media aspect, we've got the direct to consumer aspect, and we have the influence over 3-letter agencies in Congress. And sometimes people ask me after a discussion like this, how did we get to where we are with the state of what medicine is today? And I said, I just explained it to you. And now we have to swing the pendulum the other way. You're using an alternative platform. I subscribe to several channels on Rumble. I'm going to subscribe to yours today. I'm with I'm in what's called the fringe compounding space. Although luckily we're growing in compounding pharmacy. I'm associated with the wellness company, and together we're just moving the needle slowly, patient by patient, to just talk about the alternative things that do in fact integrate. I mean, that's my title, Chief of Integrated Therapeutics, that integrate traditional medicine, alternative therapies, lifestyle management to at least help people remain healthy. And at the very, very least, hey, you have an acute COVID issue, potentially you're a long hauler, you're vaccine injured, and those symptoms are really the same, and you want to talk to a practitioner that's open-minded and trained on this stuff, okay, that's what we're offering through the telehealth program. And although awareness is not as big as it would be through the major platforms, there are people that are aware, and we're helping as many as we can.
And it's kind of about just showing up is enough to move the needle. That's kind of true with just an alternative platform. Is like you really just got to show up and not ban everyone for everything. It's pretty simple right now. It's you kind of just have to show up. You just have to show up and not be, not be tiptoeing and he, she, they, them, and Slava Ukraini and Lizzo's stunning and brave. Like just by sitting here and being a normal person where you're like, nah, I don't like fat chicks. Like that alone is just like a normal statement, right? You say that, people are like, oh, you're body shaming. No, I'm not. I'm just saying it's not for me, man. Go for it. I don't care. Like, but even just little things like, no, I don't think America's the great state. And I kind of like it. I think it's kind of fucking cool to own a gun. It's just like the threshold of being a normal human is so low right now. And people are so starved of it. Of like, well, is that an offensive thing? Is that no, it's not at all, man. Just to do that. The threshold is so low to win people over because they've been on YouTube or Facebook for so many years where it's you can't post that and well, I don't want to go to Facebook jail and I don't want to get censored, that people have forgotten what it's like to just talk shit. Like you can say stuff and just not mean it. One of my close friends of this podcast is this Muslim dude. All we ever do is like make jokes about him being a terrorist. And people are like, you shouldn't say that. I'm like, he starts it. He comes on my show and starts it. Like, that's the funny thing. And it's like, he's married to a Jewish woman. He couldn't be more of a normal, loving dude. But like, he constantly is like making memes of himself as and like, that's what's funny. And, I'm a white guy with blue eyes. He jokes about me being like a neo-Nazi fascist. It's a joke. And just acting normal and joking, people are like, oh yeah. Like our tolerance has been so stripped in just 2 or 3 years of what it's like to just talk shit and be not even talking about medicine and gun ownership and border control and having a nation, just the simplest things of just being someone normal. I think that threshold is so low and people are their receptors are so bare. It's like not having coffee for a year and then drinking an espresso. You're gonna fly through the wall. And it's and in one sense, they've kind of done us a favor that it's so simple. They just have someone on my. I have so many doctors who open up immediately because I'll just open the show and just swear, and you immediately see like their shoulders drop, and they just like really like, oh, this isn't. I'm not on Fox News or CNN. But like, welcome to the show, man. Like, I've got a fucking migraine and a half. Like, how are you doing? And you see them like kind of loosen their tie. They're like, oh, Jesus Christ, this is just a normal human, right? And I think you can project that onto so many facets of just. I think that's why people are so drawn to Joe Rogan. He's just a guy, just
He's
talking,
real. And
just
you
a
know,
human. He's
everything
got
that
flaws, sure, but we all do.
all the stuff you just said really resonates with me because I live my life that way. So first of all, I'm glad you mentioned swearing because sometimes I get on a call and I might be the first one to swear. Sometimes I'm not, and somebody else will inevitably say, "Oh, great, you guys swear." They're like, "Yeah, why?" I'm
I
like,
always let the guest I always let the guest break the seal. I'm like, I don't know who they are.
"Yeah."
You'll hear him say fuck, and you're like, there we go, my man.
They're like, "Robert, why are you relieved?" I said, "You know what? I don't trust people who never swear. They're deceitful
Yeah.
fuckers."
Yeah,
So,
they're lying motherfucker. Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
so we lie.
you've got bodies under your basement. If they're like, I try not to swear and I'd ever drink Diet Coke, and I'm like, you've murdered someone. You've
Yeah.
buried a body in a field somewhere, or you're
And
like torturing small animals. Something's wrong with you.
when you talk about making jokes, which is because as adults, we should all be tolerant and not hypersensitive. Because how much of society, movies, television have taught us this is what you should be pissed off about, and here's how you should react. Here's your guideline because our goal is to divide
Yeah.
you as we're going to divide you by religion, divide you by race, divide you, right? So I take at a martial arts school. I teach at this martial arts school. Monday nights is my night. I teach an adult class. I've got a student, Muslim guy, and we've gotten to know him. I mean, we're all part of the same tribe. Right?
Yeah.
And when we're doing techniques on each other, and we crank up the intensity, like, look, go ahead and hit. Don't injure somebody. Don't poke him in the eye. Don't give him a hand sword to the throat. But hey, you're going to crack the abdomen or something like that. Make contact. Right. Go ahead and do that. And then dude will just perform like magnificently well. And like, and you'll have a guy that took the shot and it'll be respectful. It's like, wow, man, that was a good shot. I'm like, yeah, good. I say, hey, Steve, just make sure, you know who he is, right? Just check under your car, make sure
Yeah.
there's nothing blinking
Make
or
sure your car's
ticking
not gonna blow up.
when you leave.
Yeah.
So we all make a joke like that because when you make the joke, I think that's a way of acknowledging there are groups of people that want us to be so hypersensitive and react all the time. And we just say, you know what? We're not going to do that. We're going to joke with each other about this shit.
It's almost like being an undercover cop, and like you make the cop do a felony so that he's in the mob, he's with you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's something about that where like my buddy Siraj, he works at Rumble. He's a Muslim guy. And like I remember I think I texted him on 9/11 and I was like, hey, I know today's always a difficult day for you. And he's like, he's like, I miss my uncle dearly. Best pilot I've ever met.
Oh, that's
right. But it's just like there's like a sort of like, yeah, like it's like you're not wearing a wire. You're not a narc. There's just like of course, none of that's serious. But there's just that sort of like, you're not a pussy kind of thing. Right. And there's like that's like our modern day like bonding ritual. Right. And this like hypersensitive, hyper PC, use the right pronoun or you should be gassed to death kind of world. That's almost a way of like you like pulling your shirt, like, yeah, I'm not wearing a wire at the drug deal kind of thing. It's
right.
like how they're another normal human. And like those are like the friends I'll make like from the podcast, or the ones who are like normal people. Like they'll come on, like I do like a gaming stream at night, and that's immediately how you relax. You're like, what are we gonna do? Like, I don't know, man. We're just gonna play this game and go shoot some civilians or something. Burst out laughing. They're like, oh, I fucking love Grand Theft Auto. And it's like, bam, right there. That's like a year's worth of bonding in 9 seconds. Right. And most people, the vast majority of people, operate on that wavelength. But no one wants to say it if no one else is saying it online. And all you have to do is just kind of be yourself. And then when you can establish that trust, Well, then you can start talking about other stuff. And it's like, yeah, man. So I do interview these doctors and they do say that fertility is going down. Well, now all of a sudden people have begun to trust me more. They're like, well, Tommy is just a normal guy. Maybe he isn't lying about this. And maybe the people that, will shadow ban your post because you misgendered someone, maybe they're not the most honest, normal human beings. Maybe they would lie about a safe and effective generic drug. So you start to see how this stuff cascades. So it starts as a joke, texting Siraj on 9/11, but it becomes much more serious and it has much greater implications. So I don't really know where you're going with that, but yeah.
Well, where I think about this in my mind, having two kids that are homeschooled.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I've observed, we were talking, the long arc for me drew on, gosh, the influence of these large social media internet behemoths, how much control they have versus the alternative platforms, which are growing rapidly, which I'm very thankful for, but how much control they have over influencing perception and the American psyche with the goal of keeping people divided and pissed off. And one of the things I said to my wife, who endures all of the homeschooling at home, right?
Yeah.
She handles it all, is we have been very cognizant to extremely limit screen time for the boys. And I've been opening up to allowing more screen time that we control, because there's an Elon Musk quote that really stuck with me, and thinking about, gosh, what are the careers going to be like in 5 or 6 years when the first boy is going to be of college age? Are there a lot of college degrees that are going to be worth it at the time, or should we just collect skills? And Elon Musk said, you can become useful and relevant in anything in 3 months for free on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I focus on at this moment in time for my boys. Listen, don't start thinking about, I'm going to do this or this or this for my career. Start acquiring skills. You know how to cook. We know how to do some bushcraft. That's cool shit that boys can do, right? I was in Boy Scouts, and I'm not taking my boys to Boy Scouts because, yes, we have a Las Vegas troop with 2 girls.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm just not going to participate there. Yes, they learn martial arts. They're learning how to teach it. The older one's learning how to teach it. I said, hey, you want to make cool stuff? Let's have a little maker business. Maybe I'll buy a CNC machine sometime this year, and you'll learn how to use the software, the 3D design stuff. I don't know how to use it. Collect skills. So that's where we focus their screen time, because I was convinced when we used to allow them, say, look, you can get an hour a week, watch whatever you want. It's got to be a kid show. Watch whatever you want. Their behavior changed. And their behavior changed that they're arguing with each other, but they're back talking and arguing with my wife and me. What's going on? What are you guys watching? And a kid's show that's supposedly about learning about marine biology or learning about aerospace engineering with these characters. The way those characters talk to each other, they smart and they snip back, taught them how to behave. And then they're in group activities, more than just martial arts. My wife was a classically trained professional ballerina performer out here in Las Vegas in one of the off-Broadway shows. And and the boys pursue that too. And they're in that. And it's like, when I'm looking at all the other kids that are around, and the vast majority of the kids behave that way, like these characters that are difficult to deal with. And I told my wife, I said, you know what? We're never going to let them watch that crap again, because it brings them home and they start acting that way to each other. They're always in conflict. They conflict with us. And now everybody in the house is stressed, because I'm convinced that those shows are designed to make kids difficult to parent. So parents can't wait to kick them the hell out of the door when they're old enough. Gosh, and there's no family bonding. And as soon as we limited the screen time, the younger one, he held on to the habits longer than the old one. And we point out to them, we're like, okay, look, we changed dance schools, by the way. Say, okay, we changed dance schools because of the behavior of some of the other students. Look how they treated you. Look how they picked on you. Look how they pick on each other. Everything is mean. It's nasty. Do you like that? No, they're always in defense mode. I said, no, let's go to the martial arts school. And they know it. The family probably, at least one of them watches a show like this. The De La Hoya family, Oscar's cousin, has 7 kids. And that whole family is so polite, so nice to each other. They glow with loving energy. They're so supportive of each other, of other kids at the school. And they're a great example for my wife and I to tell the boys, say, you know what? If you want to have friends, you have friends like that, not the ones that pick on you. And you know what else those parents did? Those parents homeschooled their children, and they both used to work for the school district here in Las Vegas, but they homeschooled all 7 children. 7. I mean, 7. Think about that. 7. and they homeschooled all seven. I mean, some of them, I think the youngest one is 7 or 8. So about the age of our youngest. It's like and look how they treat each other. Look how they treat other people around. That's how we want you guys to behave. And when we pulled away that designed screen time, 10,000 foot view as a parent, rather than sticking a screen in front of them to parent them because they're so difficult to deal with when they don't have the screen in front of them, it's made a big advance. So let's extrapolate that to what you and I were talking about earlier, how much the mainstream platforms influence perception. You get a bunch of bots or legit people. Ivermectin's crap. How dare you? This is stupid. I'm a PhD. And how many people did they capture and say, well, yeah, yes, you're right. It's stupid. I'm with you. I'm on your team. I'm going to go shame everybody who supported that. That's how that mindset capture is done. And shows like this have to break that, which you are. And look I'm sure your follower base has grown, and there's maybe even more people that'll listen to something either you or I said on this show and say, I never thought of that before. And then they influence a couple other friends. Or they call up one of their Muslim buddies and say, dude, can you come over? We need to have a chat or a coffee, but I'm going to make sure you're not wearing a vest. Is that cool?
Yeah. Yeah.
Make a joke about it.
Yeah. And then he'll make a joke to you and be like, yeah, I know you're Catholic, man. Just don't touch my kids. Like, like some fucking right. And that's, but again, that is how you win over people. And yeah, it's so obvious too. I mean, I was on YouTube until I got permabanned from them. And I'm on, so I moved over to Rumble in like summer, almost 2 years ago, exactly. And I've gotten almost like 5.5 million downloads just in 2 years on like a alternative platform. Not even I'm on a platform that is a fraction of the size of YouTube, and my channel has grown exponentially on this smaller platform. So to me, I'm like, that right there, that's like the proof is in the pudding. Once you have a platform that isn't censored and shadow banned and throttled, you go, oh, what people are after, it's really so simple. Like sometimes I'll come into the show and I'll be like, I gotta do X, Y, and Z. And then other times I'm like, no, like the mainstream has so numbed people to what reality is that I don't have to do anything. It's like if I went to Japan, like one of my friends went to Japan. We were talking about it last night. So if you go there, like people take pictures of you just because you're tall and white. like you don't have to do anything. Like you're just a celebrity. That's kind of what it's like now that people have been their tolerance has just been sapped. They don't even know what's real anymore and what's acceptable anymore. Who's a man and who's a woman and what's hateful and what isn't, and what new psyop is. Do I support this? Does that mean I support that? And everyone's just walking on ice. And then you come over to this show and it's just like, what's up, motherfucker? And it's just this weird like water in the face. And it's almost like Jason Bourne. Like they're starting to remember. They're like, who am I? I used to hear that term. And I'm like, you're a fucking loser. And they're like, I used to talk to my friends. Like they're like weird keywords that are like, I used to be in college and drink and talk shit. Like, and it's so easy. People are just kind of reverting back to who they were. And so in some cases, I mean, in some sense, like the current paradigm has almost benefited me because it has so stripped people of any remembrance of what it's like to even just be normal and just talk shit just for the sake of it, because it's just a natural way to get through the day. They've almost done me a favor. So I don't know, maybe I'm thankful for them.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I'm glad your channel, your following is growing. It'll continue. It will continue. And you're doing it without bots. You're doing it without the influence, despite everything that exists to keep this information, your wavelength suppressed. It's grown. I mean, I'll be honest, from a business perspective with my farmers, there's been a couple of times I thought, you know what, the business has come in cycles since I don't take insurance. It's like, gosh, I don't know if this business is going to make it, and I have to work really hard to find other verticals, in the compounding space that work, and it's worked out. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to stay here. I'm here for a reason, because I will be one of the ones that doesn't deny the important therapy for people. I mean, I don't think it's over. I think I'm real concerned this fourth quarter, like, okay, what's going to be in the flu shots? Even if there's nothing nefarious in the flu shots, what's the immune system impact of getting a flu shot, and then you kind of have a latent virus. You have a slow smoldering COVID, or then you get COVID. So I encourage all the scientific people to look up something called the Hoskins effect. And basically what it says is if you get immunized against something, a virus, you're actually more likely to be infected by that virus because of what's called the Hoskins effect, also known as original antigenic sin. Natural immunity and natural exposure. It's a much better way to go. That doesn't mean you're not going to have disease. Okay, we know how to treat the disease. But the Hoskins effect makes you question, do we really need immunizations? Have they provided the benefits that we wanted to, or have we actually caused a negative impact on immune defense and surveillance? And that's what these 3 elegant papers by a British researcher, Hoskins, were all about. So I'm concerned about that. This isn't going to go away. There's always going to be something for me to do. And I've had friends of mine, other pharmacists, say, well, what if everybody just got so healthy they don't need anything? They don't need hormone replacement therapy. They don't need them. I said, well, then I'll change my profession. I'll go from pharmacy to farming. I grew up in Pennsylvania. We had 20 head of cattle on our farm. My grandparents had 100. So you're probably in an area where, you know what I was doing every weekend with my cousins, baling hay.
Yeah.
We were baling hay. I'm like, I'm fine. I'll go find something else to do. But until then, this is the space I know. I've got good people that I'm surrounded by. We're here to help the public with information. And, I'm happy to be on this episode, any other episode in the future. You want to cover health and wellness topics. You want to cover, I don't know.
Let's just go down the rabbit hole, man. I think
we can go deeper. I'm there.
Let's just do that. Yeah. We'll go full deep state, World Economic Forum, all that shit. That's my bread and butter. That's what I love.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah. We can go. I've been reading so much about like World War I and World War II and all the financing and banking and like the marriage between like the Dulles brothers and corporations and Smedley Butler and Eisenhower. And yeah, man, that's the shit. I don't mind talking about it because people are like, you sound crazy. I'm like, this is provable U.S. history. Here are citations. Like, not talking about lizard people. I'm like, no, the E.H. Harriman's a real like banking company. Like you can find that. I'd love to do an episode with you about that sometime, dude.
Yeah. Let's keep in touch. Let's pick something, and I'll go through all of my notes that I've saved from my Admiral Bud. I mean, in addition to the reading list.
Yeah.
For 4 or 5 years straight, it's all these articles. Read this. It's about banking. It's about corporation. It's about who controls Africa. It's about technology, materials science journals. Yes, it's about medicine. It's like, oh my gosh, where are we? And he said, now, he'll give me an example. Okay, a lot of people may ask you about med beds.
Yeah.
Okay, I have no verification that med beds, like in the movie Elysium, they exist. And I'm sure that many people who do know about a technology that is just like that, or a stepping stone technology to that, are under NDAs. So this is how he'll operate. He'll say, well, here's what I can tell you. We call them the pods, and our top tier operators get to use them after they go out and do their stuff.
Oh, dude, the number of like tier 1 former CIA guys I've talked to outside of this show, they're like, Tommy, I know you think I sound crazy, but there are these things called med beds. And I'm like, I've heard it like independent. And I don't mean like someone I mean like Delta Force, Dev Grew. And I'm like, oh
yeah,
like you're like the 5th person I've heard like multiply. I'm like, there's something fucking going on, man.
Yeah. Well, all I can tell you is what he told me, what he's permitted to say. He'll say, well, here's what I can tell you. He said, our top tier guys, as long as they come back and they don't have an issue that requires surgery, we put them in the pods. We call them for 1 or 2 45-minute sessions. He says they come out good as new. And he's very emphatic about good as new, what that means. And then he sends me a couple links to the DARPA website. There's a podcast and an article on bioelectronics for tissue generation. He said, now, if that's available to the public, if you can see that, can you imagine where we really are? He said, just think about that.
If you can see it, then you're looking at like a flip phone Nokia.
That's right.
They're on the iPhone. If they're showing you the flip phone, they're on the iPad.
And he probably knows where they are and is not allowed to disclose.
Sure,
I respect that. But I love how he gives me the crumbs.
Oh, yeah, no, I get.
If you see this here and you're just this dude who could search on the website, he says, imagine where we really are.
They walk you right up to it. And then they're like, use your imagination.
Right.
Yeah, I'll send you an email. Let's definitely schedule another one, man. And yeah, I'd love for you to send me that book list. I knock down an audiobook about every 5 days, so I would love that list. I'll
They're not all audio. Some of them are, and some of them are fiction. I mean,
yeah. No, I don't care. Yeah, I don't care.
Tom Clancy was fed information.
Well, yeah, he
He
got
was fed,
investigated by the FBI because he
you
knew
know,
so much.
shit. Because
He
they're
knew
like,
so much
dude,
about Ohio class nukes. They were like, "What do you?"
that's right.
They're like, "This is special access program shit." They're, "How the fuck do you know this?" Like,
Yeah, people
yeah,
reveal to him, and
yeah,
he writes well about it. I mean, there's other people I think too who were also fed information. I'll just drop the name. I think Gene Roddenberry was fed information. So we have a lot of interesting stuff we can talk about.
absolutely. Send me the list, and yeah, it doesn't matter if they're audiobooks or not. I'll read them. I'm a voracious reader. Let's do that for now. Let's wrap this one up because I gotta hop on a phone call real quick, and then actually, speaking of who controls Africa and that, right after this or at 4 o'clock, I got a CIA guy coming on. We're talking about the push for war in Africa and natural resources there and uranium. So the military industrial complex trudges on. But
Ask him if the size of Africa, as we know it on maps and globes, is underrepresented. The true size of Africa underrepresented. See what he has to say.
all right, I'll do it. I don't care.
All right,
Um, Um, send me an email so we can stay in touch.
you got it.
I'll give you my number. We can text and give me those books and shit, and we'll definitely schedule another one. I'm looking forward to it, dude.
Sounds good to me. Appreciate it, Tommy. Thanks for
All
having me
right,
on the
man.
show.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on,
Okay.
guys. Till